So this is maybe the most annoying, but also maybe the most important observation I made during 2020 is I stumbled onto, I think, one of the great cooking vlog channels that really annoyed me.
Which probably annoys you more because you're a cooking channel and you're a vlogger.
For sure. And just to give you some context, obviously everybody knows what happened in 2020, right? We're all home by ourselves. We're not able to have our teams. And I, at the time, was working with a team. I had a shooter. Chris was shooting like food videos for me. I had people running my show on video influencers. So I was used to having people around. Everybody. I think a lot of creators can relate to it. And then everything got shut down and we're by ourselves at home and having to create content or not create content. In fact, this is around the time I quit my food channel. And part of that was because I couldn't have my shooter in the house because, you know, I got a whole bunch of kids.
Totally.
And everybody was trying to isolate at the time. So I didn't think anything of it. But guess what? Among many other reasons, I just stopped uploading to my food channel. Judy and I kept vlogging or whatever. But guess what I did a lot of? I was watching a lot of YouTube, okay? And there was this creator that I kind of knew of, but I didn't really follow him or I wasn't subscribed to his channel and was uploading content all by himself. And this is what annoyed me about it. Number one, he was uploading food content, so himself cooking by himself, unedited, sometimes like 15, 20, 30, 40 minutes long. And those videos were getting him hundreds of thousands of views. And what annoyed me is the fact that I watched all of them. I literally watched all of this guy's videos every single day he posted. Because guess what didn't stop? My passion for food, my interest for cooking. And he legit was somebody that, you know, knew recipes, knew how to cook. And to a certain degree, like he, you know, I don't know if he was a proper chef or not, but he was just making cooking videos, the thing that I stopped doing. So while at the same time, I was annoyed that this guy's getting hundreds of thousands of views, just like I'm sure a lot of other cooking creators were, I was also watching his content.
Yeah.
Uniquely, I was just watching it all the way through. Now, I'm just kind of having fun talking about that story. It's Kenji Lopez, and he still creates content, right? And I remember watching, even like thinking, I wonder if he does this, like if this is a normal thing. He only started doing it because of his circumstance. Because just like me, just like so many other creators, he didn't have a shooter. He didn't have his production team. He wasn't able to go into the studio or the office, right? Or work with people.
Out of necessity.
Yeah, out of necessity. He just like threw on a GoPro and had his phone as his monitor, sometimes not even using his monitor. So that's even more annoying. The fact that he's like shooting video, he doesn't know if it's in the shot or not, and no edits. Just straight up, hey, you want to learn how to cook chicken wings? We're going to show you the baking it in the oven method. I'm going to show you right now. Just have to watch 40 minutes of it, right? And people were watching it. So that's a whole nother discussion about that vlog style content hitting at the right time and why he was getting hundreds of thousands of views. But the thing that was unique about him is that he didn't worry about the production, one, and two, he literally was just talking as if he would if somebody else was hanging out in his kitchen. Why that was significant to me? Judy and I have been doing this for over a decade. I was already kind of doing what he was doing, but I was just putting it into my vlog channel with Judy. It's Judy's life, and it was being edited and chopped up. You know, we have different seasons, right? Ups and downs or whatever, but we get a lot of views.
Yeah.
But this guy was doing that unedited. And what's interesting is I wouldn't like say this guy, I wouldn't say Kenji is, you know, going to win an Academy Award for Mr. Coolman or anything like that. But that didn't matter because people not only appreciated his cooking videos and probably learned a lot about his recipes, they genuinely, I think, liked him. Like created a connection with him. And he was just being himself. Yeah. It is literally the purest form of a cooking creator just being 100% authentic. And it was in the beginning of that era where I think vlogging came back, and this whole discussion about authenticity and more casual content, not highly produced, became like a discussion point. And what's interesting is, and I've never talked to him, I've never even met him. He even came to my event, didn't even say hi or anything. I would like to talk to him, because my one question is, I think I already know the answer. Did you think about the strategy around that format of cooking content? And I bet you he didn't.
Yeah.
He literally just flipped the camera on, recorded what he was doing, turned the camera off, went to his computer and literally uploaded it. I bet you he did it in real time, like within 24 hours or maybe just hours of him. And there's nothing more authentic than that.
Yeah.
And me being a vlogger, I was also fascinated that was still possible in a niche that was so competitive to the point where, like, hey, I couldn't have the high production and the lights and the camera guy, and I literally quit. And here's this guy with literally nothing. And I don't want to discount his experience as a recipe guy. You know, he's worked with big groups and productions and, you know, brands and companies. So he's got experience with all that stuff. But in this moment, he had none of it, yet he was able to connect with an audience. And I think the big takeaway for me is even in the most competitive niches that you think every idea has been done, every, you know, format has been thought of, being yourself, being completely honest and authentic, not only is important, it's necessary, because when you're authentic, you're letting your ideas and thoughts flow freely out of you.
Yeah.
And that will always be new and different, because nobody can replicate that.
Yeah.
You're the only person that can think that thought and then apply that thought to this ideal you have in a format that you create and your content and your passion. And that is new and different. And what's new and different is novel, and that will never have competition. And I thought that was the observation I made of Kenji Lopez and his content, and why it was significant for any other creator to understand, because so many people are afraid to be authentic, when if they knew how valuable it was, they would be even more authentic. They maybe be 100% authentic.
There was this era where all the late night hosts, we didn't call each other up. We didn't talk to each other. There were very few of us, and everyone had their little fiefdom, and we were constantly peering over our stone walls at each other.
Do you know what I find weird about that?
You're not allowed to talk on your interview.
It's the opposite of stand-up comedy. Alan
Yes.
Havey said this wonderful thing to me. He's an older guy. He was in Mad Men. You might have seen him. Grey-haired.
Of course,
gentleman.
Alan Havey, very
He's
funny man.
incredible. But he said this thing to me about comedy. He said, we're out for ourselves, but in it together.
Yes.
That stand-up world of going, you escape competition through authenticity.
Yes.
No one else can beat you at being you. And it strikes me that the late night hosts were all the same, and they just couldn't see that. No one had told them, oh, you can all be friends. There's nothing you can do that Letterman can do, and Jay Leno can't do what you do. And it was such a different skill set, but no one told you that. You could all be friends. You could have gone out for drinks every night.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by comedians because obviously they're funny.
Yeah.
And they make me laugh. But it's maybe one of the hardest professions in the world.
Yeah,
to put
I
yourself
agree.
out there and to perform, and your jokes might not be funny. And because, I mean, like, it's real-time feedback.
It's vulnerable, yeah.
Yeah, it's very vulnerable. I mean, you're literally exposed, and if they don't laugh, I mean, you're gonna know right away.
Exactly.
And that's just like, you have to have a lot of guts.
Yeah.
But also, what is interesting about comedians, some of the funniest comedians are literally just observing or sharing thoughts on what we all look at, experience, and live every single day.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that their unique perspective on it and the way they talk about it, right? So it's like ultimate storytelling is what makes it interesting.
Exactly.
And so when I heard that clip, I was like, it's fascinating that this guy said that, because he was saying what makes every comedian able to succeed is the fact that you could even be a similar demographic or from a similar culture. But the fact that it's your own observation and your own thought, that's a unique take on the same thing other people talk about, right? Like two comedians can talk about the same thing and both be funny in completely different ways, right? One can like make this like observation that we all think or whatever, but like he's willing to say it, so he's like kind of brash about it, unapologetic. What's that? I don't know what you're saying. What do you want? She just spit out all her apples on the floor. Okay. Then another guy literally will just like tell the story of whatever you observed, not even thinking like what we're not thinking. He's just saying, he's like putting a special spin on that situation that makes it comedic. Same story, same situation, same circumstance, two totally different people, their own unique take on either what they observe or the way they say it. Don't touch that. And so what he said was literally what makes every creator be able to create. Yes? French fries? We don't have French fries. Here, you want me to hold you? Here, you want to go right here? You want to help? You want to help? But it's the fact that every creator can create in their own unique way, and even in a competitive niche, not have competitors.
Yes.
I've always knew that. And you know, in the early days, I didn't know how to explain it because it was interesting, just like comedians, like what he was saying. And I know one thing about comedians I do know. Yeah, go ahead, put it up there. One thing I know about comedians is the fact that they almost have like a brotherhood with each other. They want to support each other. They talk about how they like hanging out with other comedians because their profession is kind of lonely in a way, and the only people that would understand them is other comedians.
Yeah.
Guess who else talks like that?
Creators. That's so true.
And so, of course, I'm not talking about the community. Yes? What do you want? What do you want? Go watch your show. Look, go watch your show, okay?
Isabella, you want cheese?
Can I give him a APPLE? Here, let's see. Here. Here, you want applesauce? Want applesauce? Here. Which one do you want? Do you want the strawberry or cinnamon? Okay, here, go. Okay, here, give it to me. Go. Go sit down in the living room, watch TV. Go, 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 go. And the reason it was significant to me, though, what he was saying, isn't just the correlation. It's that as creators, sometimes you get to a point where you're worried about new people coming into your niche. Naturally, especially if you see your views go down. But the quickest way to come up with an idea that gets you more interest and more views is just to do something different, which is done by being your authentic, true self. And the reason I kind of wanted to even talk about this is because authenticity, being authentic, became like a cliche. It became kind of like, okay, whatever.
It's cheesy.
It's not only cheese, it's like, it's so easy to just say it.
Yeah.
But if you really think about what this guy just said about comedians, I mean, that's the thing. Like comedians, if you think about it, it's even more limited because there's only so many stages, right? And there's only so many stadiums and tours. But with comedians, even then, you can still have same people in the same, like with the same audience, but say in different ways. And creators, I believe it's the same way. Just like what I think, that's what Kenji did.
Yes.
He literally just took his circumstance, right? And he took his own way of doing things, and he took his own thoughts, applied it to a niche that was super competitive by 2020. You know, I started in the days where we kind of everyone knew each other. Now it's just so massive that you feel like everything's been done, But no one was willing to do a 40-minute video with a GoPro
Exactly.
with no edits.
Because it wasn't the right thing to do,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I keep coming back. Benji, remind me, what was the original slogan of YouTube?
Oh, broadcast yourself.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and why is that important? It's because it was not what the traditional things were, like on TV, but the reality is exactly what you're saying, right? Even on TV, even on the biggest stages in the world, the same thing is true, and we should learn from that, right? And I love the idea of like almost taking authenticity seriously. Like, it's not just a cheesy thing, but if you take it seriously and think about what that actually means for yourself as a creator and what that physically means that you have to do every day to be authentic, that's not cheesy at all. That's not cheesy at all to me, at least.
Well, I think there's a couple things, though, about being authentic that aren't talked about enough. Part of being authentic is also risking that you could be annoying or become an asshole. When you think of the greatest creatives,
Yeah.
I mean, the one that me and you can probably relate to or like kind of talk a little bit about is Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversation and a lot of opinions around his personality
Yeah.
and kind of like how he was perceived by other people. And would you say that the term asshole could have
totally.
been used?
Even the people who loved him called him that.
Oh, for sure, okay? Now, I'm not saying you have to be an asshole to be authentic. It's just one of the risks.
Yeah.
This is why people don't want to be authentic.
Because they want to be liked by everyone.
They want to be liked by everybody.
Yeah.
And more importantly, they don't want to be disliked by anyone,
Yeah.
by even just one person.
That's true.
But when you kind of like stifle your own personality, your true self, you kind of stifle the creative side of you too.
That's
because
true, yeah.
you're like trigger shy. You're a
Yeah.
little hesitant.
Oh, like I have this idea, but if it doesn't work, I might get made fun of, or there might be haters in the comments,
Yeah.
right?
So, I mean, I talk about another cooking creator a lot, right? Which is Matt.
Yeah.
And the other day, I told him, hey, I talked about you in my latest podcast. And just like without hesitation, he goes, oh, that I'm an asshole or something like that. He's just joking, right? I don't actually think that of him.
No, not at
But
all.
it's just funny that he kind of was self-deprecating because I think the thing about him is he is 100% authentic.
He totally is.
He doesn't really have the same kind of filters like a lot of creatives.
Yes.
See, you know what's interesting? This is completely random. I wonder if a lot of creators who say they're introvert and that's why they don't hang out with people really don't want to risk hurting someone else's feelings. And that's why they don't hang out with
this
other
is
people.
fascinating. I love
But
that.
guess what? When they're on camera, completely themselves.
Yeah.
Like they just like let it pour out. You know, the best creators, and they're not all introverts. There's definitely some extroverts, but it's amazing how many introverts are these successful creators.
Yeah.
When the camera turns on, they can just like be completely free.
Yeah.
No, it's not everybody. I think over the years with cancel culture and being politically correct and, you know, having more social norms being inherited by social media users, people have like kind of like they're stifling themselves.
Yeah.
Like in the very beginning, I even say this about myself. I look at old vlogs of myself. I could see that creative freedom because I also was a lot more authentic. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm not authentic now. Like what you're hearing is 100% authentic. But in the early days, there wasn't this worry about like, oh, what's someone gonna say?
Yeah.
Or what's the comment? We were also like blessed that we had like generally 99.999999999% positive comments, which
Yeah.
a lot of creators can relate to. But man, it was just kind of a different vibe.
Yeah.
And so I think that my point is, people say, oh, be authentic,
Yeah.
but they don't acknowledge the side that there's some risk to being authentic. Because
Well,
just
there's-
like the comedian, right?
Yes.
What happens to the comedian that's completely authentic and just says it how it is? There's a risk that no one will laugh,
Yeah.
or two, people would disagree with you. Do you
Yeah.
get what I'm saying?
I totally do. And there is something to be said, right, about that. Of course, like we're people, we want to be liked by other people, even the people who are most themselves, right? But it should always start with you knowing who you are first, and then you can temper that with other people's opinions over time, rather than the other way around. Like, I think so many of our discussions have been about what your priorities are as a person, as a creator, whatever, as an entrepreneur, right? And I think that in this case, people tend to prioritize other people's thoughts and let them make the decisions before they make their own. I've been listening to this book by Pete Carroll and one of his, kind of his friends, I guess, who is like a neuroscientist, right, and a psychologist. And you've heard of FOMO, right?
Yes.
FOMO, fear of missing out, right? They talk about FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. And they say that, and they talk about the context right now, that really with a kind of modern culture, and especially with online culture, because everyone has access, it's the first time in human history that you've ever really been able to tell how many people disagree with you. But the flip side is also true. There's also so many people that agree with you. Now, of course, you and I think would agree that you should find some true balance there, but it's much better to bias yourself towards focusing on who you are instead of having a fear of other people's opinions.
I actually disagree completely.
That's good to hear. I want to know.
There is no balance when you're 100% authentic.
That's true, yeah.
And a good example of this is Dave Chappelle. So let's just stay on this comedian thing. Dave Chappelle, every time a new special comes out, not only does he piss off the people that got pissed off last time, he finds like a whole nother group to like go out of his. Now, I'm not saying everyone should replicate it. The point is this. It's the fact that he is unapologetically himself. Even when he risks like, this is not the right time. This is why comedians, this is why they say comedians have to have the ability to be free thinking and free speaking. Freedom of speech for them is so important. In fact, they're kind of the gauge of the culture and society because they just say it how it is. So if you cancel a comedian because you're just saying the truth, it's the beginning of a bigger problem. This is why, if you think about it, it was crazy. I remember watching the last Dave Chappelle stand-up, right?
Yes.
And literally from the beginning, I'm like holding on to my seat because like he is going right in for it. And by the end, it's just, it not only is it unapologetically authentic because he's just letting his raw thoughts pour out. You know, of course, he's like got it scripted, he's got it dialed in, he's performing, he's still trying to make you laugh. But he goes the opposite direction of you. He has no balance here. There is no like, oh, this, he just goes straight for the jugular, all out. And that's what made it so funny. Because I'm like, oh, he did the unexpected, right? Like, you kind of maybe thought like, oh, maybe he's gonna like tone it down, right? Balance it out. Because he doesn't have to. That's what's interesting. He doesn't have to go that crazy. He makes anything funny. But he's like, F it. I'm just gonna go all. And that's what makes him like so epic. That's what's so crazy. The end of his show, he always has this kind of like epic like final song when he shows pictures of everybody. Like all comedians just love him. And why do they love him? He's willing to do what no one else is willing to even try or risk. And it's just him being authentic to like his true thoughts, opinions, and perspective. And so that's where I kind of disagree. There is just no balance in it.
Yeah.
But there's definitely high risk. Now, if you're trying to run a business, we also know like that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
But what do we try to talk about? Being truly authentic.
Yeah.
And being truly authentic means that some people will be annoyed of you. Some people will think you're an asshole. And then some people literally like might like hate your guts.
Yeah.
But how many people love you? Now, we don't want to get into politics, but there's a certain presidential candidate who's like the epitome of this. His last name starts with a T. And he not only has people that hate him with a like desire, but there's people that love him with their full heart.
It's a double-edged sword, right? As what I would say, right? Which is why I say that there should be a balance, because if the sword is unbalanced, then maybe you're not cutting the right cloth, so to
But the
speak.
discussion is about authenticity.
But you're totally right. When it comes to authenticity, there is no balance in that. I would love to one-up you in terms of the history, though, about actually the comedians, because it's the perfect thing. You talk about comedians as the ultimate creators. You trace back the history of comedians. It goes all the way back to court jesters and the kingdoms, right? And you know what the jesters had? They had a special rule that allowed them to say the thing that was unpopular, because guess what? Otherwise, the king would chop off their head,
Yes.
right? It's kind of crazy to think about that privilege of a comedian, and ultimately, as you say, of a creator, goes all the way back hundreds, thousands of years throughout human history, and the role that, first of all, the importance of speech plays, but also just the importance of comedy, and in terms of authenticity, ultimately.
So you even said it, right? A jester's job is to
Poke fun.
not only poke fun, but say the thing no one else can say.
Literally, they had a special
And then-
jester's privilege as well.
I mean, if you think about it, outside of maybe painters back then, or cooks, you're talking about creator cooks or whatever, and a handful of other things, he's like the most ultimate creator
Yes.
in that moment.
Yes.
Right? Because he's doing the thing that's risky. He's doing the thing that literally comes with a special get out of jail free pass
Literally,
kind of thing,
yeah.
right? And he's kind of expected to do it.
He is, yes.
He's expected. That's why, like, as a creator, this is where I think my whole perspective, and I think like society in general is catching up with the power of creators, is because we love when somebody does something unexpected, something different, something new.
Yeah, we love to innovate.
And that comes from being 100% authentic
Yes, it does.
and not having any kind of barriers.
Yeah.
Because let's just think about it the logical way, the opposite way. Say you're not authentic. Actually, bring this up, right? I've told you about this. Typically, the creators that find themselves failing, or their growth is slowing, or it's just not working, and worst part, they're borderline burnt out or just not feeling passionate about
Totally.
it, are the ones that were never authentic in the first place,
Yeah.
and they just copied other people.
Yeah.
They might have done a great job, right? Strategic, got a lot of views, made a lot of money, got their bag, but they're just lost.
Yeah.
They're just like lost at sea because they just did what other people. So
They're following the trend.
it didn't come from an internal place of instinct.
Yes.
It came from observing like, oh, this worked for them. I'm not going to take the risk of trying something new, what like only I can create. I'll just do what this other person. And they just ride that wave as long as possible.
Exactly.
And sometimes people can keep riding other people's waves, but the creators that sustain their creator career, their business, the longest are the ones that always go back to what their gut is telling them, even at the risk that it might not work,
Yeah.
that people might disagree with it. Even your own audience,
Yeah.
like it's just kind of different. But dude, you have to go through the motions, right? Like as a jester, you have to put yourself out there, just
Yeah.
like a comedian. You have to go on stage. You have to practice it. Let's just talk about, talk about Chappelle. I talked about his Netflix special. What you don't see is all the little stand-up comedy bars and lounges that he performs all those things at.
Getting the reps.
Getting the reps, but testing his material.
Exactly.
Now, what we see is the grand performance that's been dialed in after maybe hundreds, maybe over 1,000, but still, all of it, when he's like putting his pen to paper, comes from an authentic place of literally just his own observations, his
Yeah.
own thoughts. And as creators, we have to also go through that whole process too. Because if you want to get to the peak, you want to get the Netflix special and become like a Dave Chappelle, it all starts with your own thoughts.
Yeah, people.
And it can't be tainted by someone else's judgments.
I think about a comedian that is doing all of those shows, but is only copying the whole time. They're never going to come up with new material for their show, right? Mm-hmm. They will only ever be an imitator of other people in that regard. It's not like it just magically happens once you get to that big show. It's that he probably failed a bunch of times, or that comedians fail a bunch of times on those smaller stages before they know what works. And then they weave it together into this epic thing at the very end, right? And I think that I like what you say about kind of being authentic, but it really, that is what leads to innovating in any space, but in particular when it comes to anything creative, is that you have to be true to yourself first, because your perspective is what makes it unique, not your skill or your whatever, right? It comes from who you are and what you've been through.
Yeah, I mean, going back to like the first story of Kenji, right? No lights. I don't remember seeing any lights. He was using a GoPro, which arguably is like one of the most low production. Probably still HD, maybe
sure, it's
4K or whatever,
yeah,
right?
It's a good product.
But no one's helping him.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he's doing in terms of his like creative process if he's scripting it, but it didn't sound scripted.
Yeah.
Like he's just talking. Like that's what that's like. Wow. Like sometimes I would do my lines 2 or 3 times, right? Me and Chris, we would shoot the video 3 times to get us enough B-roll in just case we didn't get the money shot. This dude, for sure, he's not filming it 2 or 3 times because the volume. I just know as a home cook, and a cooking creator, I was like, there's just no way he could do that. And he was doing it all by himself. I wonder if he had someone helping upload or look through the content. But what made it unique was his take on it.
Exactly.
That was another thing that's fascinating too. I think this like is a good argument to that. You can always make something old new.
Yeah.
He was already doing recipes that I've done before, that other people have done, that have already gone viral, but he was just showing you how to cook it his way, in his kitchen, right? And he, another thing too that was
so personal.
Talking about personal, one thing I didn't mention, throughout his whole 40 minutes, he's just talking about stories, his own stories. Oh, I remember this one time, I made this, and I accidentally dropped some paprika in here, and it was supposed to be cayenne pepper, and I found out, like, it's like, actually, that was way better.
Yeah.
All of it, that's his. No one else can replicate that story. By the way, this is really gnarly. Okay, so if it's too strong for you, you don't have to drink it. But mine and yours has ginger in it.
Ooh.
And beets.
I love a good ginger drink.
This is, I'm telling you, this is scary stuff. Is it good? Yours doesn't have ginger in it, though. Don't worry. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
I'm kind of afraid, actually.
I like the color, actually. A little bit of red with the green. Oh, that's good.
It's good for you.
It's kind of like a ginger shot.
Ginger shot, yeah, for sure. Well,
a little sweeter.
What's crazy is there's not that much ginger and it's still strong because it's organic ginger. Anyways, what were we gonna say?
I mean, I just think we should talk about our takeaways. If you think about authenticity, I think about why everything that you've talked to me about in the last 6 months, right? About how we went from this era of extremely optimized content, and ultimately what that was is copying, right? That's why you go to the YouTube experts, right? Is because they've got all the info that you can copy and know exactly what to do.
That's a good point.
But
because I was always saying you're copying other creators.
Yeah.
But when you learn from a YouTube expert, you're actually further copying the copycatters.
Exactly.
This is one thing why I always said, and I just said this to Judy, I don't want to be an expert for the sake of being an expert. I want my expertise to come from my experience of me actually creating.
Exactly.
Because by the way, I never made the connection. Hey, it's okay. It's fine.
Oh, to the experts, you mean?
Yeah. You're okay. I never made the connection. It's one thing to copy another creator, but when you learn from an expert who probably observed, they were doing what that copycat does, but they're doing it across the board, and then they're isolating it to like the best practices, which, don't get me wrong, works.
And
it's a great way to learn and maybe accelerate your success.
Totally.
But ultimately, none of that is coming creatively from your own instinct or your own insight or your own ideas. And this is why there's this like reoccurring theme of like, just be authentic, like be yourself. Because in some ways, there's a lot of creators out there that aren't themselves at all. They're literally just replicants of good other people's ideas.
Exactly.
And this is why you find people that like kind of feel lost.
That's exactly it.
Versus when you're 100% authentic and you're literally yourself the whole time, the ideas come from a place that you can always reach to.
Yes.
Because that was your method. That was your way to get there. The thing about that is there's no guaranteed route of success, or some ideas, just like a comedian, are going to fall flat on their face.
That's right.
You might have a video that gets 10% of the views it normally gets.
You know, I'm going to say you will have a video that has 10% of the views it normally gets.
I love it when someone has to precursor a video. They go, "Hey guys, I'm doing this video for myself. I know that a lot of you guys don't want to see this. You are, you know, you're here for this, but I'm gonna give you that because this is my thing. It's just for myself. So I'm sorry if you don't like it. If you want to subscribe, that's up to you." I always, in my mind, I go, "Why even say any of that?
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Like literally, just do it and let the chips fall where they may."
So true.
And let people make the comments or observations. And if someone does, like this is a suggestion I would make to creators. If somebody in the comments is a prick about it and goes, "This is different. Why are you changing? This is what I subscribe for." You gotta go, "Yeah."
Sorry to lose you as a listener.
It's like they should be like, if they say this is different, you say, "Yeah, it is."
It is.
Just be straight up with them. But don't justify what you're doing by giving people a heads up. Literally just do it because, the most badass artists, they just do things. They don't make a fuss about it. They're not getting permission. They're not giving you a disclosure. Yeah. They don't give you a heads up. The most craziest ideas just come out of nowhere. And that's the thing. Actually, ideas are coming out of nowhere all the time in our mind. We're just not letting those connect with the creation process. And that's why there's so many channels that look the same. This is the Mr. Beastification. Is not that they all look like Mr. Beast. No. It's that they all literally just did the most strategic thing that was most optimized, that would yield the biggest ROI. And then that's why they all look the same. That's what's crazy. I see even cooking channels that look like Mr. Beast videos. And yeah, they get lots of views. And hey, good for them. They gain subscribers. They made money. But at the end of it, because I met a lot of these people and they tell me, they're like, "Benji, not only do I feel lost, I feel like my soul is being torn apart."
It's crazy that you bring up. So I was gonna say, I don't mean to give a prerequisite here after talking about the prerequisites and the upfront discussions, but I was gonna say, I don't mean to get all hippy dippy and everything like that, but it really comes back to that. Like you talk all the time about staying close to the river, and you've never fully explained that to me. So I'd love for you to explain that to me.
It goes to like a human instinct of always stay close to the water.
Yes. Because
water is life.
Yes.
If you're too far away from water, you're not going to survive. You're not going to exist.
That's right.
So when I say stay close to the river, right?
As a creator,
the creators that are the most successful, the longest, they find the river on their own. No one guided them there. It just kind of happened. Yeah, it was. I guess it's ironic me talking about this because I have a book called YouTube Secrets. I had a channel called Video Influencers. I know like all the YouTube extras, so we're kind of guiding the way. But a true creative, the creators that I respect the highest, the most, and that includes someone like a Judy, right? Mm-hmm. Someone like a Matt. No one guided them to the river. Their own river is literally their authentic self and their ideas, their creative process, their content creation magic. That's the river. And so you want to stay there, right? And what I mean by don't go too far away from the river, don't be tempted by ideas of other rivers and other bodies of water or other treasures, other like winds. Now, that's my point. Your river is good enough. Mm-hmm. It can actually flow like
to the ocean.
It could be. And initially, guess what? All it is a creek.
Yes.
It's literally just a creek. But creeks turn into what's another?
Streams.
And then streams turn into rivers, and then rivers literally turn into what? The Mississippi. What's that called? Is that a river too?
A big river.
It's cute, it's huge, right? But people feel like the river dries up.
Yeah.
No, you know what it is? The river hasn't dried up. You just got to get it going again.
Or you walked away from the river in the first place.
You walked away from it. every creator only has one river, and it's their own river. It's their own instinct. It's their own ideas and thoughts and observation and perspective, just like a comedian. When a comedian tries to be like another comedian, they're going too far away from their own river. They should just stay right where they're at. It's not saying don't grow or change or evolve. I'm saying trust that no matter where you're at in your career as a creator, that you did this once. This, I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people. If you did it once, you can do it again. In fact, you can do it even better.
Yeah.
You can do it bigger. You just have to trust your own instinct, which is the river. And that's why I say don't go too far away from the river, because people do, right? They're like, hey, there's something even better over there. I can do this or whatever. Or they get other people to stay near their river, right? They get too far away from it. The river being their creative process, the content that
their soul.
created, their soul, right? Everything. And then they like find themselves off in like a desert. There's no water around. Like, what the heck is going on? It's like they just went away from the thing that made them great in the first place. Remember what I said at the very beginning? I look back at my younger self in 2010, and there's glimpses of that 100% authentic self that I still aspire to be like again. Because when we're younger, we don't overthink things. We just kind of do it. I mean, like, I feel bad if you're a young person, you do overthink things. But like when you're this age, when you're like a baby, you just play, right? Yeah. They just completely just free to just jump around and jump off things and, you know, like scream or whatever. And that's what I mean by the river. Staying close to that, trusting that, developing that. I think that's the one thing. You can develop your creative skills. You can get better at storytelling. You can get better at coming up with ideas or formatting something, scripting something, communicating it through your content. The one thing you actually never have to
get better at
is just being yourself.
That's so true.
It's the one thing that is unique to you and only you that nobody else can have, that people discount the most, because you apply that to all the other skills, to all the other aspects of being a creator, and it's going to be something different every time compared to every other creator. And that's where the magic is. Once in a while, it's a crappy idea. It doesn't work, right? But you'd be surprised the closer you are to that. This is why, like, think about fashion designers.
Yeah.
The best fashion designers always just do what they want to do.
That's so true.
The runway models, what they're wearing, always is a kind of eccentric and weird.
It totally is.
And then it gets boiled down to the thing that you can market and you can business. But when you look at the runway shows, it's kind of crazy. It's because the fashion designers are, like I say, they're close to the river. They're just doing the thing that is so natural. It's an instinct for them. And that's another thing too. They, in my opinion, seem to be kind of like recluses. You don't see them a lot in the wild. They're like kind of stick to themselves. I remember once me and Judy were at a resort. This one went to Africa with you, right?
Oh, really?
We were in Zanzibar. I won't say the name of this fashion person. It was this island off the coast of, what was that country?
Tanzania?
Tanzania.
Yeah.
It's called Zanzibar, right? And it was this really nice resort, and we saw this fashion icon there.
Really?
Sitting all by themselves. And I remember I looked at her, and it's her, so I looked at that person and go, oh my gosh, I think I know who that is. And I didn't say anything to Judy because I was like, there's no way that person is there. And then Judy later on said, hey, did you see that person sitting there? I was like, yeah. Was that? She's like, that was all by themselves, just having breakfast at this really nice resort. And so my point is this. Part of what makes being a creator lonely is just the fact that you're doing this by yourself. There aren't creators everywhere like there are like firemen if you're in the fire department, or if you're a computer science engineer working at a big tech firm or whatever. There's another part of it too. Because when you're a creator, creative, and you're thinking these kind of thoughts, you're also kind of lonely inside.
Yeah.
Because no one is like you, and that's why I feel like fashion designers are really unique. I don't know why, it's just kind of a lonely thing. And this is why, just like comedians, creators like to be around each other.
Yes.
Why comedians flock to other comedians. This is why, like, when, Joe Rogan started his comedy store or his comedy club, all the comedians not only like to go there and perform, but they also like to hang out. This is why creators, whenever there's an industry event or a creator event, it doesn't matter if they get paid or not. They just want to be there because they want to be around other creators, because it is kind of a lonely thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Because also, when you're your authentic self, most people won't get you. Because most of the world, I'd say like 98% of the world, they are worried about what other people think.
Yeah.
They are thinking about how am I going to be judged. They don't want to take a risk.
Yeah.
They don't want to risk failure. See, as a creator, you're already kind of putting yourself out there. When you're on YouTube or social media, you're on that same stage like a comedian would be.
Yeah.
There's immediate feedback.
Yeah.
In fact, maybe even worse, because people are going to be really mean in the comments sometimes, right? Like,
That's
they're
true.
going to really lay down some judgment.
Yeah, there's a separation.
Versus if you are just in a job where there's rules.
Yeah.
You can't be mean to your coworkers.
No.
Hey, we've got like HR
Professionalism.
and
Yeah.
professional, all that kind of stuff. All goes out the window as a creator. It is a lonely thing to be that. And that thing that makes it lonely is also the thing that makes it most powerful.
Mm.
And it's also the thing that's scariest, especially after you have success and you're hiring people and you've got bills to pay and you've got a reputation now. That thing that was magical, that authentic you, now it's like it could be a source of some pain, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like some adjustment periods or some evolution that might cause some discomfort. That's what I mean by say don't go away from the river. Stay right there. Like, be comfortable with all
Yes.
that. Because whether you want to or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you live in denial or not, that is the truth, it's going to slap you upside the face and reality will hit. Because ultimately, this whole thing that we call YouTube and making videos and coming up with ideas, it comes from inside of here.
Yes.
Or it comes from someone else. And if it comes from someone else, they're going to do it better. Now, you can do their idea maybe better for a short time, but then when it comes time to like change or whatever, you won't have that instinct or the ability to come up with it. So you're looking for the next best thing. And I've just seen too many people not only burn out, but kind of like fade away into history, versus the people that always stay next to the river, that's always coming up with their own ideas. They let their authentic self really come out and kind of like flow and fly at the highest levels. They're just comfortable in the ups and downs. And those are the ones that ultimately become like the legends. And you can see that with all the people that have been around since the beginning, because they just trust their instincts.